Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi and today we're taking a look at some new Dior products. So we've got the Dior Blooming Bouquet items and some of their holiday items have been released. So I picked up a few things. So we're going to go through that, but this is the packaging right now from Dior.com. So if you purchase from there, this is the gift box that I got, and I just wanted to share this because this is such a beautiful keepsake box. It would be great to, give as a gift and so forth. So let me just go ahead and show you what I picked up from the collection. So I picked up the Miss Dior candle, and you can see that the print on here goes pretty much all the way around. And this is going to be your Miss Dior fragrance. This is the one from last year that I picked up. So you can see they do have similar. I think these make really nice gifts. And, I actually have not burned mine from last year, but I do plan on using it to hold, pencils and so forth afterwards. These are so beautiful. So I was really happy to pick this one up. Then I also picked up one of the two new Backstage palettes. This is 011 Silver Essentials. The other one is 010. I forget whether it's gold or bronze essentials, but it's going to be your warmer color story. I also got the blush in Signature Shimmer 290. And this is one that I had been told before was going to be a Japanese exclusive. And actually it sold out there like pretty much immediately. It was really hard to get there. And, people were selling it for exorbitant amounts on like eBay. But this is the blush. So we're going to take a look at this. I have to say it's not exactly what I expected it to be. And then I also picked up the new Dior Addict lip case. And then I picked up the Shine that is new for this collection. This is 962 Pink Bloom. So when you purchase the Dior Addict lipstick, you cannot purchase the limited edition shade as a refill. So it comes with the black case. So I purchased the case separately. And that's everything that I picked up from this collection, but there are a ton of things that they released. And, there's a beautiful lavender cushion powder and so forth. I believe I've picked up that powder before in different packaging and I just didn't love it. So I didn't pick that one up again. But let's go ahead and move on to some swatches and then we'll talk about each of these products in detail. Let's start off with swatches of the 962 Pink Bloom. I'm going to go ahead and put this one here on my hand. And you can see that it is a really pretty neutral pink. Just a really nice light pink. And that's what's on my lips right now. It has a little bit of warmth, but it's a neutral pink. Next, let's take a look at the blush. So this is 290 Signature Shimmer. And you can see right there where I've already like swiped it with my finger. That part has gotten, the texture has changed. It's not exactly hard pan because it's actually allowing me to pick up the product more easily versus harder. But it does have a textural change there. So here is the blush. We're going to put that right here. You can see it's very light. This actually is a very light lavender shade with blue reflect. And if you want to really see this, you really want to buff this into the skin. So to me, this is better off as more of a highlighter shade versus a blush shade, just because you really need to buff that in to get much of the blue, but you can see the blue, much of the purple, but you can see the blue reflect more easily. So you can see that there. And we'll look at quite a few cheek swatches of this as well. So you can see that built up. But I do feel like this formula, you can see how much of it has adhered to my finger and does not come off on the swatch. The new Dior blush formula is not great. This is that formula. So it's a little disappointing. I was hoping, like when Chanel does the limited edition blushes, they use a different formula. And I was kind of hoping that would be the case with Dior, but it is the same as their most recently reformulated blushes. And I don't love the formula. So we've got quite a few comparisons of other shades from other brands that you could pick up that might be similar as well. And then this here is Silver Essentials. And they have redone these, so they've taken the primer shade out of the palette. But I have to say, I think these palettes are still really nice. The formulas feel the same. We start off with this kind of shimmery white, And then this beautiful champagne pearly shimmer. It has almost that wet look to it. And then we have a mauve shade here. And this, I mean, it's a beautiful like dusty mauve. I think that's really pretty. And in the next row, this is going to be our silver shade. And you can see that we have a really nice satin sheen to this. It's going to be a soft silver and it's not too cool. So I think that's really nice. And then we have more of this mid-tone gray. Really, I mean, I have to say I love this color story here. Then we have this deeper gray, and this one has some sparkle in there. And this is a deeper charcoal. Again, this is actually, it's slightly cool, but it's really more of a neutral charcoal. So it doesn't run too cool. And then we have a light pink. I think these two shades, this light pink and this light purple, make really great base shades that you can kind of buff all over the eyelid and the brow bone and so forth. We have this really pretty soft lavender. I think those were really nice additions. And then our last shade is this kind of deep eggplant aubergine shade. And I think, again, really beautiful. So I love this color story. I think is gorgeous. We're also going to compare it with the cool neutrals. I have had a request for that, and another palette as well. So let's go ahead and start off with demos and details. So we might as well start off with the eyeshadow palette. And just a few details on this. We do have a 6-month shelf life. There's 10 grams of product, and this is made in France. So we've got a variety of different finishes in here. We have that beautiful white satin. It's called Pearl. There's a pink shimmer for the second shade. The mauve shade is going to be a satin, and it's a pretty subtle satin. It's almost a satin matte. The silver is also a satin, but that one, you know, you can see that one has a bit more of a sheen to it. The steel shade next to that, that middle shade in the palette, is also going to be a satin, and it's pretty comparable in the amount of sheen to the silver shade right next to it. The anthracite, the dark gray, the charcoal with the shimmer, that is going to be a shimmer shade. So you can see little bits of silver glitter in there. And, you know, it just makes it a little different. But the base on that is pretty much a matte. So we have a matte with some shimmer to it. Then we have the very soft pink and lavender shade down at the bottom. So they're calling that pink and lilac. The pink is actually a satin, and when you buff that in, you can see a tiny bit of sheen, but it's a very subtle satin. And then the lilac is, they're calling that a holographic shade. To be honest though, I don't see any color shift with that. To me, it looks more like a satin matte. I don't see any holographic qualities to that. And then the last shade, that kind of eggplant shade, they're calling blueberry. And that is a satin, but again, that's a very subtle satin matte there. I think it's a really nice shade. Overall, I have to say I love this color story. This is kind of like my favorite type of color story here. You've got cool shades, but they are not overly cool. So, you know, and you've got a variety of different textures, different, you know, finishes, and, you know, you've got the purple and the pink in there that I think really help kind of balance this out. Honestly, I think one of the shades that really makes this palette is actually the second shade in the palette. They're calling it the pink shimmer, but it's really more of a champagne. And that one has just a touch of warmth to it. And I think that really helps kind of warm up any of the shades in the palette. Plus, it's got this beautiful sheen to it. So they're calling that a shimmer, but it really, you know, I think it's more than a shimmer. Like, it's more of a satin shimmer versus the anthracite shimmer, the dark charcoal gray, which was more of a matte shimmer. So just something to kind of distinguish those there. But, you know, that particular pink shimmer kind of gives you more of that wet look to the eye. So quality-wise, these shadows feel the same as the previous DIOR Backstage palettes that did have kind of that creamy primer in there. I have to say I'm happy not to have that creamy primer in there because although I never mind that when it's a new palette, it does get messy over time. And as you're using the shadows, you get like fallout and stuff in there, and it can kind of get that, you know, it gets a little gunky. So I'm happy to have that removed. Packaging is the same on these, as well as, you know, product size and so forth. So overall, I think that this Silver Essentials palette is really nice and I am enjoying playing with it. Now, these shades are going to be soft. That's true of pretty much all the Backstage palettes. You know, you can put these on very softly. You can build these up though. And I think that's a key factor here. So overall though, it's a great palette. I'm really, really happy with this. So I think this is probably my favorite Backstage palette. I only have a couple because I have not always loved their color stories. So at the moment, I actually only have this and the Cool Neutrals. I used to have one or two others like a long, long time ago when these started coming out, but I passed those on at this point. So let's go ahead and move on to some swatches with some other palettes here. And we're going to start off with the Cool Neutrals palette from DIOR Backstage. So here's our Silver Essentials, here's our Cool Neutrals. And you can see right off the bat that these are going to be pretty different. You know, we've got this creamy primer shade here. I'll go ahead and put that there. And this is really just, you know, kind of like a base. It does help camouflage the eye. And I actually like the product itself, but I'd rather it be separate. Then we move on to this shade here, which they are calling Silver, a silver highlighter, but it's really, again, more of a champagne shade. I think that's a really beautiful shade. This is a great palette, in my opinion. Then we have this ombre sculpting powder, which is kind of a dusty mauve with a bit more pink in it, like kind of a dusty rose mauve. And it's kind of a creamy matte texture. Then we have a pink shimmer. And let's put that right here. And while we're swatching that, let me just go ahead and compare that with the pink here. So I'm gonna swatch it with the pink one right there. And we can see, I don't know if they're technically supposed to be the same shade or not, but they are close enough. So there's a slight nuance that's different between the two of them, nothing that would be noticeable. So I would say that those are essentially the same shade. Then the middle shade here is a Shimmer Lilac. And let's go up here. Made a mess. Let me clean that off real quickly. All right, and you can see lilac, it's actually, again, a bit more of a rosy lilac shade. You know, if you've seen the Miss Kim pink lilac trees, that's really more of the shade for that one. And then this shade here has some brown in here. They're calling it Purple Shimmer, but it's definitely more of a brown with a tiny bit of purple, but I would say it's definitely brown. Then we have a pink matte, and this is going to be deeper and a little bit warmer than the pink shimmer. We have a mauve matte, and this is one of those shades that I use a lot. You can see it's a little bit lighter and a little bit rosier than this one here, which was the ombre sculpting powder. And then our last shade here is a matte plum, and you can see, you know, although this is definitely going to be different than that in the silver palette, it does definitely have some similarity. It's like a warmer version. So let me show you these side by side. All right, so here are the two palettes together. I've tried to get them kind of matched up. And you can see that overall the Cool Neutrals, we're looking more at roses and, you know, some brown nude shades in there, versus the silver, which is going to be more of your cooler purples and grays. And so they complement each other very well, but they are not dupes aside from that pink shimmer shade. And actually the Cool Neutrals is going to be warmer in tone than the Silver Essentials. While saying that, they, you know, this is really neutral leaning cool. This is a cool palette, but it's still not overly cool to the point where sometimes you get like those blue tone silvers and so forth that really don't work well on anybody with any warmth in their skin. This is not that. So this will probably not work for people with really warm tones in their skin, but if you are slightly warm tone, neutral or cool, I think the Silver Essential palette will work. But again, there is a second Backstage palette that came out that has warmer tones to it. The other palette I wanted to take a look at is this one here from Linda Hallberg. And this is going to be called the Aim Higher palette. I love this palette. And, you know, it looks like I haven't touched it, but I've actually used this a couple times. I keep meaning to feature this one on my channel and I haven't gotten there yet, but it's a really, really beautiful palette. We don't have, you know, a ton of similar shades, but I figured let's go ahead and swatch it. All right, I started swatching it, but I wanted to redo that swatch. So here's the first shade, which is a yellow shade here. And you can see this one actually is a holographic shade. You've got yellow, but it reflects to kind of this light pink as well. And then we have this pretty, you know, this is going to be like kind of a neutral beigey champagne with a little bit of a satin shimmer to it. And then we have a matte, kind of like a matte soft taupe with more of a warm beigey base. We have a matte light gray here. And you can see how this one actually has a bit more blue in it than those in the Silver Essentials. Our next shade here is, oh, I love this shade. Let's actually start down here. So this is gonna be one of those satin brown shades that has a bit of like a gray reflect to it. So really pretty. We have a matte brown right next to that. This is going to be deeper, and this is a pretty neutral one. We have this really deep charcoal shimmer. And again, this is going to be cooler than that in Silver Essentials. You can see we've got blue in there. And then we have a lighter silver. This is more of your true silver, but again, more of that blue undertone in there. And then our last shade is a matte black. So overall, I think this is an amazing palette as well. It is pretty different from the Silver Essentials. It's also a lot more pigmented and so forth, but I think it's a really great palette that has some of the similar shades. If you're looking for something even cooler than Silver Essentials, I think this is a great option. So my thoughts on the Silver Essentials palette, for me, it's a must-have. I absolutely love the color story of this. You've got these cool shades. You've got kind of these mauvey plums and, you know, lavenders and so forth. And those are, you know, my favorite kinds of shades. This is definitely buildable. And yeah, it's not too cool that, you know, it doesn't, it still kind of goes with everything. It's really a cool neutral palette as well, just on the other end of the spectrum compared to the cool neutrals from Dior, which is more brown based. So this is just your gray based equivalent essentially. And I'm really happy that the grays are kind of neutral grays and they don't have too much blue, which is so easy to do. If anybody's ever tried to paint something, you know, gray, you know, in certain light, it looks, you know, kind of more brown. In certain lights, it can look a little bit more blue. It's so hard to find a true gray. So I feel the same way about eyeshadows. Let's go ahead and move on to the blush. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the details and demos for this while we talk about it. The new Dior Rouge Blush in 290 Signature Shimmer is limited edition. It's made in France. We have 4.6 grams of product and there's a 1-year shelf life. And I do want to just note that the regular blush formula that has been reformulated, those are a bit heavier than this one here. So they do have, you know, a higher gram weight. We've got 6.7 grams of product versus this 4.6. But when you actually pick up the compacts, you can tell that this is lighter weight. That being said, the pan size looks to be about the same, but it doesn't bevel up as much. So I would tend to say there's probably slightly less product in here. You know, you can't always tell from the weight because the formula and the colors and so forth can change that. But I would tend to say that this is a smaller blush. And yeah, I have to say, I'm just not really impressed with the formula here. I don't really like the new reformulated blushes from Dior. I was really hoping that for this limited edition blush, they would do something a little different like Chanel does with their limited edition blushes, but they did not. And it is just pretty firm in the pan. And with the new Dior Rouge blushes, there have been some decent ones. There have been some that aren't so great. So it's kind of hit or miss. But I do feel like this formula is not going to hold up well over time. It's already, it's hard to get up with your fingers, to be honest, you know, to actually swatch it with your fingers. So it does work better with a dense brush. And you can pick up the product, even if you don't really see it on there. Once you start buffing that into your skin, you can really see that blue reflect. The blue reflect though definitely comes with, obviously light reflection, but you don't necessarily see as much of that purple. So I feel like it's a little misleading when you look at it in the pan because you don't see any shimmer, you don't see any reflect, you just see this beautiful lilac color. And I would love to have gotten a blush that was not holographic with that lilac color. That being said, I did read before I placed my order, I did read that it said holographic. So I knew that there was going to be a reflect of some type with this. And, for me, I thought that could be something that could work well as a highlighter. So you can see in the demos, we've got it buffed in, we've got it applied like a blush, we've got it mixed with a blush, we've also got it as a highlight. And I think for me, I will tend to use this shade more so mixed with another blush or as a highlight to get a little bit of that blue reflect, but to soften it up a little bit. The purple shade does help kind of cool off any blush shade that you're using. Now, after seeing this, kind of on the skin and so forth, it did make me think of that Addiction Nuancer shade that I picked up. So we've got quite a few swatch comparisons. Let's take a look. So this is the Addiction Nuancer shade in 005N Aurora Veil. And you can see they don't look the same in the actual pan. Formula for this is super, it's really soft and more of a creamy powder. I really like that. But look at that on the skin. They are similar. So I would definitely say that if you are sad that you missed out on this Dior blush, this Addiction one, it's better. Very, very similar in color. You really can't see much of a difference in the color and the reflect. This perhaps has more of a lavender reflect versus more of a blue in the Dior, but they're almost identical. However, this formula is by far a ton better. So, and this is less expensive. So overall, you win with the Addiction. So I would definitely recommend that. And now that they are being sold here in the United States, they're, it's a little bit easier to access for US citizens. Now, another one I want to take a look at, this is a Sephora collection blush called Over the Moon, number 14. And they don't have this one anymore, but I did want to swatch this for anybody who does have this. This one's going to be more pink, but we do have a bit of a purple hue to it. This does not have the holographic reflect. And then, of course, we have to take a look at the Suku Melting Powder Blush in 105. This was an amazing shade that came out this year. We're going to put this one right at the top. But you can see this is going to be a little bit more pink. We don't have the blue reflect, but we do have a sheen to this. And it's a really pretty kind of pinky purple shade there, but it's definitely more pink than the Dior. And then this one here is Valentino in 03. And again, this one's also going to be more pink. We'll put that one right here. It's more rosy, but you do get a little bit of purple in there. So I did want to kind of compare that. And then this one here by request, we have the Chanel Fantasy de Chanel that came out this year. Really beautiful blush, but this is going to be more pink and is significantly warmer. And yeah, you can see, again, no blue reflect. This actually has a warmer reflect of kind of like some silver and gold in there. So those are my comparisons with the purple blushes. Again, I think the Addiction shade is by far the closest, and I just think is a better product overall. So I'd recommend that over the Dior. Now, if you are not in the US and you don't have access easily to Addiction, before it did become available here, I purchased some from Fude Japan. So Toshiya at Fude Japan, he's essentially like a personal shopper in Japan. He has a shop where he sells brushes and makeup and so forth from Japan. And I purchased from there, and, great service. There are a few other resources like Beauty Gypsy also does it. Everglow Cosmetics is another one. So those are different like places that you could purchase Addiction from that I know are reputable. Now let's go ahead and move on to the lip swatches for the lipstick. Now, if you are not familiar with the Dior Addict Lip Shine formula, I have to say I think it's a really nice formula here. It feels kind of like the YSL Volupte Shines, Chantecaille Lip Veil. You know, you have kind of that glossy, thin finish. There's a little bit of an oilier content, almost like a Rouge Coco Flash, but not quite as oily as that. So they have a little bit more body to them, which I find to be more comfortable on the lips. I also find that they don't dry out my lips. So overall, I think it's a great formula. And I really like this formula from Dior, so it's one of my favorites from them. And yeah, so I picked up this pink. It did look kind of similar to some other ones that I already had, but I thought it might be different enough. You never really know with the Dior promo photos because they are usually not super accurate with their lip swatches. So what do you think? Let me know what you think of this shade, but I do have some comparisons. Now, as for product details, we have 3.2 grams of product. It's made in France, and this limited edition shade is going to be the same size as those in the regular permanent collection. So we've got the swatch here of 682 Pink Bloom, and I just want to show you this case real quickly compared to last year. So this is the new one, Blooming Bouquet, and this is last year's Miss Dior. So, both beautiful, but different. So those are them. Let's do a few comparisons of some other Dior Addict shades. Now, this one is last year's shade, 1947 Miss Dior. I'm going to put this here because it does not match up, but I did want to just kind of show you how those compared. You can see this is going to be a little bit warmer, but it's also more nude. So we got a little brown and peach kind of mixed into that pink shade there. Then we have 463 Dior Ribbon, and let's see how this one compares. This is in the permanent range. You can see that that is going to be a pretty close match. So if you already have that, I don't think, this is slightly warmer, the Dior Ribbon, but they're fairly close. Then we have 576 Rose Bagatelle, and there we go. This one is also going to be fairly similar there. Let me go ahead and put this one right up here too, so you can kind of see they are really, really close. This is definitely even closer than Ribbon. This is ever so slightly lighter, like it's a little bit more of a baby pink in comparison, but the levels of cool versus neutral versus warm, they're about the same in this. So it's really just slightly more baby pink. And then another one I wanted to look at here, this one is 526 Mallow Rose. And if you are using different cases, just so you know, Dior does print the name and the number of the lipstick right here on the refill. And I love how you don't have to, take it, apart to see. Well, this is going to be a little bit deeper. This one does have shimmer. This is one of my favorites. This is one of my most used shades from Dior. I think it's a really beautiful soft shimmer. And then I have to take a look at the Guerlain. This is number 63. This is the Cherry Blossom shade that came out. So let's go ahead and swatch that nearby. And you can see it's different. And this obviously is going to be a thicker formula, but it still is vaguely similar. So, you do have another option there if you missed out on that one. So overall, my thoughts on this collection, I have to say, every year when Dior does this sort of floral collection, their Miss Dior collection, I'm always a sucker for this packaging. I absolutely love it. They always do the florals so well. They are gorgeous. So I'm really happy I picked up the candle because I think that's a great way to have a little piece of home decor with that I know I will use, and then I know I will continue to use that container after the candle actually burns up. So, I think that is a great buy. It makes a beautiful gift if you have an occasion to give it to somebody. I think they make great Mother's Day gifts and things like that as well. So, I'm really happy with that. I think, the packaging that they have with, this lipstick case, some of the products I didn't get, like that cushion powder and the large, 10-pan eyeshadow palette or however many shadows are in there. Those are gorgeous. I just knew I wasn't going to use those contents, so I didn't pick them up, but I love having the option of getting something like this. However, I do wish that Dior would make it so that you could purchase this refill separately so you don't end up having the extra black case. But you know, I guess they're not there yet. So overall, I think the lipstick is a really great shade. I probably didn't need this because I do, you know, have similar shades, but I think it's a beautiful pink. I'm really happy with the color, and I know this is one that I'm going to keep in this case, carry it around with me because it's just gorgeous. So really happy with that. Oh, and before we move on too much, I did want to actually just swatch one more blush. This is the Gucci in True Pink, and it doesn't match up with the purple, but I did want to show you how it looks with that since I did use it in the demo. And that's what's on my face today. As for the blush, I personally, you know, I love the color. I love the idea of it. I do wish it was a little less holographic and a little bit more purple, and I wish it was a different formula. So I would have to say the blush is actually, unfortunately, a fail overall, because I would just highly recommend the Addiction one over that. I think it's a much better option, and I don't think it really is close enough to the Suku, which, you know, I know a lot of people were probably hoping that that would be a nice dupe for it, but I think the Addiction is closer. And again, that's really something, in my opinion, better suited for a highlight or as a base to blush, mixing it in or so forth. But straight up as blush, this one's just a little bit too blue for me. So the blush, I think you're better off with some other options there. So hopefully you found something in those swatches that appeal to you. And then as for the eyeshadow palette, I love the eyeshadow palette. I think it is a great palette. I have already misplaced that. Oh, because I tried to put things away. So here it is. And yeah, you know, I love the color story. This is definitely one that I'm going to keep right here. And, you know, it's going to be one of my go-to palettes when I'm not filming and so forth as well. So I am really happy with that. I think it's great. And I'm happy that they didn't mess up this formula. So I think it's about the same as the Dior Backstage formulas in the past. And yeah, I think it's solid. So I would definitely recommend this. I would recommend the lipstick. I'd recommend any sort of decor pieces or perfumes or something if you like the particular packaging for this. I think that's a great opportunity to get, you know, something in some special packaging. But overall, I think, you know, they've got a huge collection. There's probably something for everybody in there, but these were kind of the items that called to me. And I have to say, I don't have any FOMO for anything else in the collection. I'm really happy with everything I picked up. And I would love to hear your thoughts. So please share them down below in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful day.